Hi class, this video will go over the oral presentations for Social Work 648. The general purpose of this assignment is to provide an oral presentation as though you were presenting in front of your class on the specific topic that you've chosen regarding children and families at risk. Specific topic, specific population, specific problem area. You have already selected those assignments and you will begin presenting them starting in week 4, depending on which topic you selected. That will tell you which week you are assigned to present in. The overall purpose of the assignment is to teach the class about the history and significance of the problem that you have selected. You want to develop a solid understanding of the social work literature on this problem, any policies, relevant laws, and the development of the issue over history. You're also going to be providing us an overview of current services and interventions that could be used to work with this problem issue. The presentation will be 15 to 30 minutes. It will be a PowerPoint or Prezi presentation recorded using Screencast-O-Matic and uploaded to YouTube, posted in the discussion forum for us to see. I'm just going to take a few minutes to go through each of the graded areas for the oral presentations. It should be pretty self-explanatory what's in the syllabus, but I will give a couple of clarifying points for each of those areas, so you may get a little bit more information through this video than from just reading the syllabus. So in the introduction to the issue, here you're going to identify, define, and describe the issue. How big is it? How many people does it affect? Who does it affect specifically? You know, some issues specifically affect particular populations and not other populations. So we want you to talk about how large the issue is and how wide ranging it is. What are the particular factors that make people at risk by this issue? Those are where we start to look at some of the social justice issues where certain things affect certain populations and not others, right? So we want to talk about those things. So in a review of the literature, you're going to look at the historical development of the issue over time. The syllabus talks about having the history that you go through extending back to at least the 1800s in the United States, or even further if you feel like it's relevant. Here's where I'll say that I want you to look at the history of the issue as far back as might be relevant for the issue. So how long have we been looking at or working with this issue, particularly in the United States, and how far back were legislative solutions proposed to try to address this issue? A lot of you commented on during the first week of class how you didn't realize that child protection laws kind of went back as far as 1875 or had only started kind of really formalizing into the system that we know it today in the 60s and 70s. So kind of think about that as your guideline. You know, we don't always realize how far back certain issues have been the target of social policy reform or different kind of intervention efforts on a societal level or in different communities or through private organizations. So I want you to think about how this issue has been addressed and looked at over time. I'm not going to say specifically the 1800s because it really, I think, depends on your particular issue and how far back you need to reach. But think about it in the sense of how can you describe this issue in its historical progression over time. When did this start to be an issue? Kind of how has it changed up until the point where we are today? I want you to describe significant milestones. So this is laws and policies, social movements that have impacted the issue over time. You should also discuss what the literature suggests are the most important relevant aspects for social work. So obviously this is an MSW program, so we want you to be tying things back to the relevant aspects for the social work profession, whether that's future research, whether that's interventions, whether that's how social workers need to be aware of this issue in practice, kind of how does this impact social work practice. You're going to provide an overview of current local and/or national programs and services that are available to mitigate the problem. This is where you want to provide, and it doesn't have to be in this particular point in the presentation. It could be at the end, wherever you feel like it's most relevant. But you definitely want to provide concrete examples of what folks can do, where they can get help with this issue. Whether that's in your own community or nationally, it's really going to depend on what's appropriate for the particular topic that you are discussing. Viewers of the presentation should leave with a very concrete idea of places that they can go for help or more information or specific resources on this topic. You're going to want to provide really clear information about how social workers can intervene on this issue on a micro, meso, and macro level. So here you're going to be looking at different levels of interventions for across social work practice, right? So social workers work on a clinical level, they work on community levels or in families, organizations, and then also are advocating for social change. And so I want you to think about the different levels of interventions for each of these topics. You should really be demonstrating your ability to identify specific level-based interventions. So here you're going to integrate at least 2 evidence-based practices. Again, the syllabus says that you should use the California Evidence-Based Clearinghouse for Child Welfare website, which you are certainly welcome to use to identify specific evidence-based practices. But there are also a couple of other website suggestions in your learning resources, such as there's information from the Child Welfare Information Gateway. There's information about child welfare and immigration. There's information about refugee and immigrant youth. Those kinds of resources that also provide other examples of clinical interventions or policy interventions that are evidence-based can also be incorporated. So just make sure that they are considered evidence-based. So for your micro level, you're obviously going to be talking about interventions on the clinical level, looking at different kinds of individual assessments that need to happen or adjustments to practice on the clinical level. On the meso level, you're going to be looking at interventions on a family, agency, or community level. On macro, you're going to be looking at state or national issues such as public policy, social movements. Give us a sense that you understand kind of the larger social implications of interventions for this particular population. And be really specific. So if you're saying we need more resources, I want you to tell us exactly what those resources that you're identifying that we need are. If you're saying you need more funding for this issue, what's the funding for? Be specific about what it is that you're proposing. And then in your conclusion, you're going to bring it all together. Where does all of this leave us, right? So you're providing an overview of this issue throughout history, but it should be bringing us back today. How do all of these things go together and leave us in a current situation? What kinds of research needs to be explored in the future on this issue? What's missing in our awareness about this issue? What services still need to be developed regarding this topic? What changes need to take place? Kind of what do we need to do in order to prevent this from continuing to be a problem or from recurring or to solve it kind of more proactively? So please remember that you should be citing things in APA format. In your video presentation, you should have a reference page included. I won't count it if it's only in your actual PowerPoint presentation and not in the video. It has to be in the video because that is the presentation that I'm grading. So consider this as your warning that it's like if you were in class giving us a presentation. So what we see and hear is what we get. You should plan to include at least 6 scholarly sources. This should not be a problem. There are an abundance of resources provided in this class and on all of these topics. So please make an effort to do good research, what's out there. You can use journal articles, government websites, child welfare organizations, advocacy organizations, and of course you can use the course readings. Have fun with this presentation. I look forward to hearing all of the amazing things that you come up with on these topics. They're all super interesting to me. And so I'm very excited to hear your research and your kind of analysis and assessment of how these problems came about and what you propose that we do about them.